afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Havering Means Business and a very special Meet the MP event. Thank you to Julia for joining us. Julia, how are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. I've got to say, sorry if I've got funny lighting, but I've got a bit of a migraine, so it's sort of, I look like I'm living in some dark cave. I apologise.
I wonder why you were in the dark. I mean,
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice. I've got one of those massive lights behind my laptop just to, hide the wrinkles.
Lighting. I haven't got one of those, I'm afraid.
Well, I don't normally look this good, to be honest, but the light definitely helps. What we're going to do then in terms of format is there's a few people that jumped on the call. We're going to go around and do some introductions first for anybody who wants to say hello and introduce themselves. And so we can understand who's on the call and who's part of the Havering Means Business community. If you are watching this on our Facebook Live group, Rias is keeping track of comments coming in through that. So feel free to comment or highlight anything that you'd like to ask Julia, and then we'll go from there. So let's start with should we start with Paul? Paul, how are you? And tell us a little bit about your business.
Hello guys, yeah, Paul Middleton, counsellor, and I also run Essex PC Fix, so I repair computers for small companies and home users, so I can do virtually anything on computers that other people can't. So.
Amazing. Thank you. Simon Lewin, how are you, mate?
Very well, thank you. I hope you're well too. For those who don't know me, my name's Simon Lewin. I work for an organisation called East London Business Place. We are funded by Havering Council to deliver business support to end users, and as far as the end users are concerned, the stuff that we provide is at no cost, so it's totally free, and we offer a combination of mentoring, coaching, webinars, networking, etc., etc.
And I don't know whether you just stole Glenn's thunder, but I'll introduce Glenn now. He's not impressed. Simon is not impressed. Glenn, talk to me about what you're up to, mate.
I'm having a tough day. They take me away from Canary Wharf and I go to pieces when I'm back home. Okay, I'm Glenn Addis. I'm the director of East London Business Place, which is a project set up in 2008 by the Canary Wharf Group in partnership with the East London Business Alliance charity, ELBA. And as Simon quite rightly said, we provide completely free business support, business growth and supply chain brokerage services to SMEs all across East London, particularly in this case in and around Havering, and Havering Council are in fact a current match funder of our latest Building Legacies programme, for which the funding runs down in March 2022. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that you do a lot of work with Savello, the Havering Means Business community, and you're really good at sort of making introductions and making connections in terms of that community. So thank you for the work you're doing in our community as well.
You're welcome.
Ian, talk to us a little bit about your business.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for holding this today. My company is called iBreak Limited. I'm a business consultant, and I specialise in all things around change and compliance. So that includes planning functions, governance functions, risk management, risk assessment, change, project management, and good old data protection stuff.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ian. Really appreciate that. Michelle, how are you?
Hello.
Long time no see. Welcome to a Havering Means Business meeting. How you doing? How's Asari as well?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very well. I'm Mrs. Asari. Yes, Mrs. Emil. Very, very nice to see. I have been a member of East London Business Place. I started my business in Hackney. So lovely to see you again, Simon. So my name is Michelle Fannerson here. I'm the founder of two businesses, the Conference Director, which is rebranded from Dynamic Events, which some of you may know, I don't know, which is now I'm an event strategist. helping clients to get straight about their event strategy and how that plugs into everything else that they do, whether that's revenue generation, increasing subscribers, whether, you know, events, how it plugs into the wider strategy. I've been in the business for nearly 20 years, so kind of know a little bit about that. Also, recently trained as a virtual events professional for obvious reasons. So I also help clients to deliver and design online content as well, deliver events. My other businesses, I'm a certified meditation teacher as well. That's my other passion. I have a company called Dynamic Yoga, and we do retreats, one-to-one mentor meditation, and help clients to learn how to get quiet, basically. So that's the two things that I spend my time doing.
I think I might need that, particularly after the week I've had. But just tell me a little bit, because it's one of the issues that's come up when we've been speaking to the community about that, the impact the last sort of 18 months have had, particularly in the event space, and how you think that looks moving forward.
Well, we are a resilient industry, very creative. So, you know, hence all of the new online platforms or evolved online virtual platforms that have come out now. Some clients have moved their events to virtual and really enjoyed themselves and got even more revenue, more sponsorship and more reach. Others just decided to opt out and just hide under a duvet for 12 months, and then they'll just re-emerge with like live events. You know, some like it, some don't, and some formats work, some don't for virtual events. But me personally, yes, I lost business probably from the early part of last year. Once we knew that the virus was going to come, I had quite a lot of global events in my calendar that were quickly cancelled, unfortunately. So I felt the impact before everybody else. Well, before the lockdown, actually, because we sort of plan ahead in our lives, don't we, for events. But thankfully, I was lecturing for the first half of last year, so I managed to not, you know, suffer too much. And then I also used the time to rebrand and get into gardening, so you can see my green fingers. So amazing gardening.
Good habit. Thanks, Michelle. Really appreciate that, and really good to see you. Mark, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks very much for helping me get in rather late in the day. So I'm a new kid on the block as far as Havering in Business is concerned, having met and talked with Chris a couple of weeks ago. And I'm CEO of First Step, charity that works with children with special needs and disabilities and their families. So great to be here and looking forward to hearing what Julia has to say.
Amazing. Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate that. And there's only one person to introduce next, the man who introduced us, Mark. It's Stephen James. How are you, Steve? He will come off mute in a minute, I'm positive. I didn't think I'd have to say it this early in the meeting, Steve, but you're on mute. I'll tell you what, we're going to come back to you, Steve. We'll move on to Tracy. Tracy, how are you? Is your unmute button working?
My unmute button's working. I'm just laughing at Steve and going, Hello, everybody. My name's Tracy, and I run Perfect Layout Digital Marketing, a website design and I'm sorry, I'm looking at Glenn's little message that's come up there. Website design and digital marketing agency. We help local businesses and those that are further afield, small to medium size, to get their website seen by the right people. We also offer content writing services, lead generation services, and lots of other things. So if you're in the stick with your website and need some help and want to look different and do the things it should be doing, get in touch.
Great stuff. Thank you, Tracy. Really appreciate that.
Chris, I'm back on.
You're back. Amazing. Back. Steve, tell us a bit about you and your business.
It's good to see you guys. Thank you. I'll be very quick. Welcome, Julia. Stephen James, owner of Stephen James Hornchurch, 27 years local property and letting, sales, etc. And also the founder of Stephen James Hornchurch Plus, which some of you guys gladly support. Hornchurch Plus Business Network, which was established 5 years ago, and it's still going strong. And thank you for your support. And I'll look forward to speaking to some of the colleagues here today.
Right, thanks, Steve. Really appreciate that, mate. And I can see from Facebook that we've got a few viewers now. So if you have got any comments or questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to comment on the group. But I think what we'll do is we'll start with a few questions that have come in from the community and I'm curious about, and I'd like to ask Julia, and then we'll come on to some of the individuals who are in the meeting who sent in questions and would like to ask about various aspects of business in Hornchurch and Upminster. So, Julia, thank you for joining us again. Really appreciate that. I mean, I suppose the first question is, I know that since 2017, you've been elected as a Member of Parliament, had a baby, and now a toddler, and has recently been promoted to do some work in the Cabinet Office. So surely you've not got enough jobs so far. Are you going to add another couple on?
No, thanks. I'm going to say hi to everybody. It's a real pleasure to see you all. And I actually know a number of people on the call, people like Mark from First Step, Stephen. I think the last time I saw Stephen, I was heavily pregnant at a lunch at the Chinese in Hornchurch. And it's interesting to hear about the guys doing work with the Canary Wharf Group, because in a previous life, I was a councillor in Tower Hamlets. So I know people like Howard Dorber in Canary Wharf. Obviously, great to see Paul as well, and the local councillors, and also some people that I've not met before. So thanks very much. And also just to say, I've got on the line George, Alex and Joe in my parliamentary and case working team. So insofar as you ever need our help, they are the people to go to. But no, I mean, it's a pretty full-on life at the moment, I have to admit. Since 2017, we've had the Brexit process, which was a tough time in Parliament. I got married, had a baby, and then we were hit by a global pandemic. So it's been a pretty intense 4 years, and in that time I served on the Trade Committee, the International Trade Committee, and then when Boris got into power, I was promoted in his first reshuffle in February, but then I didn't begin until June last year because I was on maternity leave. But yes, I have a role in the Cabinet Office now as a Parliamentary Secretary, and that's under Michael Gove, who is the lead in that team.
And what does that role involve?
Yeah, well, I mean, Cabinet Office is one of those things that, you know, I don't think many people really understand what it does, including MPs. But effectively, it's the centre of government. It does things like it runs the civil service. It runs a number of cross-cutting functions across government, things like HR, things like fraud and debt management, things like commercial. And then it has a number of policy areas that go across departments that sit and are coordinated by the Cabinet Office. So it's grown as an organisation in the last few years because it's been managing the transition process out of the EU, and then obviously it got some of the cross-cutting things in managing the pandemic. So it's rather ballooned in the short period of time that I've been involved in it.
It sounds like a lot of committees to me, Julia. From
our
previous conversation, you know, I'm not kidding.
If anybody has a life that involves committees, you'll appreciate it's a frustrating process, and a lot of what the Cabinet Office does is it's trying to coordinate the departments across government. So that means a lot of persuasion, trying to get the right balance between carrot and stick, and it can be a pretty grinding process at times, if I'm honest.
So from somebody who's done it for a couple of years now, what is the right balance between carrot and stick?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've only done the role for a year in terms of the Cabinet Office. It's a tricky one. I think it depends on the capability within the departments, whether you have to go for a really centralised approach or whether you go for one with a little bit less, a lighter touch. But yeah, don't get me too sucked into this stuff because it's a bit of a debate.
Okay, that's fine. I feel that there's a lot more committee chat we could go down, but let's move away from that and move on to a few of the business issues that have been sent in. Firstly, we've had a couple of questions from Chloe. Now, Chloe runs events and wedding business in Havering, and certainly, as we know, the wedding and events industry has been impacted quite a lot during lockdown. Chloe felt that the current lack of stability in terms of where, you know, the environment we're in is sort of creating havoc in the events industry, and what she should be thinking about as a business and what you can potentially be thinking about from a governmental perspective and as the local MP to support the events and wedding sector.
Thanks. I don't think Chloe's on the call, but I really appreciate the difficulty she's been going through, and it's interesting to hear from Michelle about her experience of the events business and how, for some it's been an interesting opportunity to move things online. For others, that's just not possible, and obviously the wedding industry is one of those, and it's been a real challenge. It's interesting because when you become an MP, you join lots of WhatsApp groups, and there's one for all the female Conservative MPs, and they've been expressing a lot of concern throughout this period that a lot of female-led businesses are actually in weddings, and that's been a real impact for particularly small operators in that space. It's been a very challenging time because obviously we're all alive to the very significant challenges that are being faced by people in the economy, particularly in things like events and travel, obviously. And I think it's important to view government not as one entity, but I guess some places where priorities compete with one another. So my colleague Penny Mordaunt, who sits in the Cabinet Office as well, has set up a wedding task force with Small Business Minister Paul Scully, and they've been in a lot of negotiations about what kind of changes we can get for the wedding sector to give them a bit more certainty, to loosen some of the restrictions around that. And you will have seen that we got a cap lifted on the number of guests that could go to weddings. There's a new thing coming in, I think, from the 30th of June, where you can have more weddings outside, and a number of small interventions on that. But obviously that competes with the health teams, who have a different view about the extent to which we should unlock. I think we're all very hopeful that I think that the strategy in terms of the unlocking is that we try and make it an irreversible process, which is why there was a bit of a delay when we were concerned about the extent to which the Indian variant has been taking off. But I think some of the data on that's looking positive, and so we hope that we can keep moving forward. I mean, one of the challenges, interestingly, that we're going to face, particularly in the weddings business, is the sheer backlog of weddings. So, I mean, it may be that there's a bumpy year ahead for some of the events businesses as people, all of those things that didn't happen during the pandemic, suddenly everybody is going to go from one extreme to the other, and so they may be faced with a different type of problem, which is how
potentially there's a surge in demand, right?
Exactly, which will be a challenge to manage, I suspect, at times. But I mean, we've tried throughout the pandemic to tweak the support available to businesses on the ground, and my team's done a lot of work with individual businesses locally to try and help with access to some of the support schemes. But it's very difficult when you have to move at pace to try and capture everybody that will be affected.
I suppose the other interesting trend is people, and this isn't something that I had prepared you for, Julia, so apologies for this impromptu question, but people who have decided that they are either been made redundant or have decided that they want to change in lifestyle and setting up more local businesses, particularly people who have worked in town and commuted to town. What can we do more to support SMEs in Hornchurch and Upminster, did you think?
Well, I mean, I think there's a huge amount that we can do, and this is why I was really keen to engage in this new networking group, because I've engaged previously with the Chamber of Commerce, but this is a newish group set up in October, and I think there's a lot we can do together to help each other promote different opportunities that are going on. So, for instance, my team is able, one, to help with caseworking issues, whether it's dealing with the council or whether it's dealing with national policy. But there's a whole bunch of other things that are going on that we can highlight to you. Previously, we've hosted events, things like an older people's fair, where we can highlight things like equity release businesses or support and care in the community businesses to some of the local residents. We've also hosted jobs fairs at Queen's Theatre, where we try and connect job seekers to local businesses, and we've had to, like others, move those events online, but we hope to put those back into person, and that's the kind of thing where we'd be really keen to get small businesses involved as we roll those back out again. But there's some other big things that are happening in our region where I think we can help with signposting. So one of the things is the Lower Thames crossing that's being built I had a meeting with them last week about some of the supply chain opportunities that will be coming up when that scheme gets underway. That's not just in construction, but it'll be, how do you cater all of those construction workers when they arrive? So catering and all that, for everything else that a big project like that entails. I mean, a huge amount of other things going on. Another recent development that was announced in the budget is that the Thames Estuary will have a new free port, and I think they will have a lot of business opportunities that come from that. That's a connection up between Ford, Dagenham plant, Tilbury, and London Gateway Port. So I think there's lots of things happening that I think I can highlight to you guys as local businesses, whether that's regional opportunities or whether that's local events that we host that you can get involved in, or in simply signposting you to other things that are going on. And similarly, if there is support that we can offer you if you're going through challenging times with particular tax policies, we want to hear about it and to be able to raise those with government.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Really appreciate that. One point Chloe also mentioned is, and it's interesting where you talked about that that connection with supporting women to start and run businesses in the community, and that seems to be certainly growing in scale. What can we do more to help women start, grow, and build businesses?
Well, I think networking is the start of that. If I think about examples where we've helped local business women previously, there was a lady in Hornchurch with a fantastic beauty business which involves photography as well. And obviously through our role, my team and I, we go around a lot of the local colleges and schools and so on. And we had a meeting with Havering College where we were looking at what they could do about their beauty apprenticeships. And we put them in touch with this local business lady, and she was able to provide one of their courses. So it's that sort of thing where we can just point people, right, to what's going on, and those connections can really bear fruit. We're not obviously a business ourselves, but we think that in providing those connections, we can help people help one another.
Yeah, 100%. But also it's often about celebrating success, because I think, I've been speaking about it quite a lot this week. Whilst a lot of businesses have struggled during the last 18 months, there's also been a lot of sectors that have had an extraordinary amount of growth. How do we as a community celebrate that?
I think it's a really good point, because I think it kind of becomes a national narrative that everything's absolutely disastrous, and obviously we've all been through it over the last year, and there's things that have gone badly, and other things gone very badly, but there has been a lot of change and adaptation. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the resilience of individuals and also of businesses in getting through this period. And there's been a lot of changes to business models that I think will put us in good stead in the future. So, insofar as I can hear about some of those stories through this group, I'm very happy to showcase those things, because I think there's a hell of a lot of that that's been going on. And I see that certainly within my own field. So, the Cabinet Office sort of hosts the civil service, and we're doing a hell of a lot of work on civil service reform. And what have we learned from the pandemic about how we need to manage services differently? I think there's a huge amount of work that we can do to provide better services for less money. And one of my focuses is on digital transformation across government. And we want to try and bring all of the sort of online services in government into one place, because at the moment you have something like 190 odd different logins for government services, which is absurd.
Is that all?
Well, we actually don't have a precise number, because
you don't know.
Exactly, these are the sort of things you think should be fairly straightforward to know, but you have to do a great audit of all the departments to ask them. But if we manage to get through in the next few years, putting all of those things in one place and giving people their own user accounts for government services, you start to get a much more coherent government, which can provide you much better tailored services. So, that's something that I'm doing within my field, but I'm sure that kind of learning is happening across the board in people's different types of businesses. Yeah,
and then sort of moving the user. It's an interesting one though, isn't it? Because it's using digital tools to modernise and systemize and processes in your business is important. But it's also about getting back to that new normal and sort of actually seeing people again. So when you were talking about events, I was like, actually seeing people again has been a move in the right direction, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's a hell of a lot that can be done online, but there's also, it cannot compensate for certain interactions where you can just get problems unlocked, and I found that a lot in politics. Going into the department and just being able to see the key people and saying, can we just sign this off? Can we just get this done? You can do that so much faster in person than having to set up online meetings and so on. And it's also about personal dynamics between people, which do matter, and that doesn't always work online. So I think hybrid will give us a lot of opportunities to explore different ways of working, sometimes better ways of working. And I know as a relatively new mum, that really makes a difference in how I can do my job and juggle everything. And I'm sure that's the same, not just for women, but for men. People want to spend time with their families, not always having to commute every day, go into that sort of rushed environment where you have high stress and so on. But I don't think we should give up the office because there's a lot of important personal interaction that makes things work better.
Yeah. I mean, that hybrid model, I think, is going to be the future for a lot of professions and industries now, certainly. And just from a personal perspective, next time we meet, the coffees are on me. All right. Just and I will bring some actual cash. I mean, I don't normally, Cassie normally calls me the Queen for a bunch of different reasons, but I will carry some cash next time just so I can get you a coffee.
I think it was poor old George that ended up paying, but just
George did, didn't he? Yeah.
I did actually make sure that he was compensated.
Oh, good stuff. Thank you. Well, I owe both you and George a coffee next time we see each other. I think one of the issues with a lot of local businesses is that often we see what we do day to day is removed from politics, and actually the sort of what part of what we're trying to do with events like this and with Havering Means Business is trying to just get everybody together who's interested in a successful community and make sure that we're all working together to do that. But there is often a disconnect between politics and business. Mm-hmm. Where do you think either the local council, and I'm sure Paul's got an opinion on this as well, the local council and local MPs can support and help the business community?
I mean, I think in many ways, if you guys aren't coming into contact with politicians too much, that's probably a good thing. I mean, the whole idea of a successful government is if you are left to get on with your life and not have too many interactions where bureaucracy and the rest of it is causing you grief. So, we don't want to go too much the other way, but that's not to say that I don't think that there can be value added if we have better connections between what's going on the ground for businesses and people who are making decisions that will affect businesses. And I think that's the gap that needs to be filled, which is what I'm keen to do in having these kinds of meetings. I want to understand how you're being affected by tax changes or some of the COVID restrictions and so on. I mean, Paul could probably speak better to the local council, but I mean, I don't have as much influence over that as people might assume. So my team and I try and flag things when they're happening that are causing trouble on the ground. And we've also been dealing when there's some of the council administered COVID support schemes. If there's any trouble with those, we try and flag that. And every so often an issue will erupt that will frustrate local businesses. I think parking being one of them that we will get involved in, but my influence on that level is not what people might assume.
Paul, do you want to give us a bit of input on that from the local council perspective?
In general, I think one of the biggest things you've got to understand, especially from local council, changes are made, and any change is going to affect people positively and negatively. You don't know how it's going to happen. Some people will like it, some people won't. And also, it's a bigger picture things because it affects you as a single individual. You're going to say, I don't like it. However, you've got to look at the bigger picture and is there a reason for the change? So a lot of that sort of thing has to come very much into mind, and changes are difficult to get through the council. It's not easy. It's not a click of the fingers and but that's going to happen. You have to jump through so many hoops for the smallest thing. And often things don't get, no matter what you want, it just won't happen. So it's hard. It's not
understand it's a process, not an immediate event, right?
Absolutely.
I understand that. Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate that. So we've got a few questions. The first one is from Glenn, who's on the call. Glenn, would you like to ask Julia the question you sent in?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Julia, and yeah,
Hi.
good that you mentioned Howard Dorber. Just so you know, he's my direct boss over at
Oh,
Canary
right.
Wharf.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, and you'll be pleased to know he hasn't changed at all over the last couple of years. The
I'm
only thing that
sure.
he's done is gained a beard, so he now looks like someone from Castaway,
Oh, my goodness.
in a suit, of course. Yeah, so a crucial time as we're sort of exiting lockdown, and local small and medium-sized businesses are looking for more and more revenue streams. I think it would be good if the council sort of procurement and commissioning teams did a little bit more and maybe placed a bit more focus on refreshing their existing lists of suppliers and looking at good companies right on their own doorstep. Now, I have a lot of interaction, as the type of work we do, we're funded by many East London local authorities, and Havering's one of them. But my question really is there anything more that could be done to, encourage Havering Council and other East London councils, I guess, to make more works and contract opportunities available to SMEs in the borough?
Thanks.
Great question.
Yeah, well, I have to answer it more on a national level because so when I joined the Cabinet Office in June, I sort of inherited the beginnings of a complete overhaul of how we procure. You'll know that now we've left the EU, there's an opportunity to change the rules and how procurement is run and operated. And government, I think it's something like £290 billion worth of services and goods that are procured each year by government. And so we think that there's a much better way that you can use that spend to encourage SMEs. And I think because the current rules are so complex, they favour existing players, and we want to make it much more transparent in the opportunities that are available. We want councils to do much more of what's the right word? Publishing their contract pipeline at an earlier stage so that people know what opportunities are coming up, which they can then prepare their bids for. Now, this is a bit of legislation that we've been a bit rather ambitious on, and so we're trying to run the green paper consultation and all of the responses to it at the same time as writing the legislation. It was announced in the Queen's speech, so we hope that it will be on the statute book before too long, and that will involve, as I say, giving local authorities many more opportunities to procure locally under a certain threshold of contract, and we hope that will allow them to contract more with SMEs, with other types of businesses such as social enterprises, because we're going to have draw a wider view of what value means. So not just about cost, but whether those businesses are fulfilling other objectives that the government has, whether that's employing apprenticeships, having a low environmental impact, employing local people, employing people with disabilities. So you will see a change. It may be a couple of years coming, but we're doing some quite big things in this area because we think that we can really simplify the procurement regime, and in simplifying it, give much better opportunities to SMEs.
Okay, that's great. Sorry, Tim.
No, thanks for that, Julia. I mean, you probably hear this all the time, so I'm not just going to moan for moaning's sake, but we've heard this for a number of years. I mean, ELBP, we've been running since 2008, and I've heard the same stuff trotted out by many local authorities for many, many years. And there seems to me to be a great division between the regeneration teams and what they're trying to do in terms of social value and what have you. And then it goes through to the procurement guys and the commissioning guys who go off and do what they like, probably, for very good reasons. They've got existing supply chains and they know them and they trust them and they're good for the money and all that stuff. And yet there are organizations, and we're not the only one. There are organizations like mine who are doing all that stuff about fit to supply, making sure SMEs are meeting the right credentials in terms of social value, community wealth building, environmental, anti-slavery, all that stuff. And I'm not even going to go there in terms of some of the contracts that allegedly were awarded to mates of the government and all that sort of stuff, because we could all moan about that. But I think, there's always some policy stuff being done. There's always some green paper stuff being done. But I think at a more local council level, there could be more done to say, if there are no opportunities there, what can we be doing with the local SME community to say, look, these are the types of opportunities that are likely to be coming up probably 2022 onwards, because I get it why the councils want to keep their existing supply chains for now because everyone's risk adverse at the moment. And I totally get that. But going forward, if the opportunities are not there, let's put some money into, getting people into the right place so that they can bid for this stuff in a fair and competitive arena,
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I heard it all before and so on. I think this opportunity is different because, as I say, now that we've left the transition period, we do have an opportunity to quite fundamentally change the rules. And we, rather than taking on inherited EU rules and trying to make that work with a bit of tweaking around the edges, we're basically starting a new regime from scratch. It's quite an ambitious thing to do, and it may require a bit of tweaking, but we do want to change how this works on the ground. That will include training of council procurement teams so that they understand how to use the new system, and that some of that work has already begun. Just on local procurement opportunities, I mean, again, I can't really speak for the council, but as I say, we had a great event, a meeting last week with the head of the Lower Thames Crossing. They're holding a supply chain SME event for Essex Chamber of Commerce, and I've asked whether they could do one for this group so that you can start seeing what kinds of opportunities are coming online. They have what do they have? They have something sort of a supplier book that they have, and I think there's only about 3 or 4 businesses in Hornchurch and Upminster who are actually on this list. So I'm very keen that more of you get onto their register so that you get told about the opportunities as and when they come up.
Yeah, can you do me a massive favour, Julia? I'm just conscious of time, and I want to make sure we get as much questions in as possible. Can you if you can share that? How we do that, and so we can share it to the community. That
Chris, can I just ask one more thing? Julia, sorry to the great and we're aware of the Thames Crossing, and we're doing work with the Supply Chain Sustainability School who's been appointed, so we're doing all the right things there. I think the reason they probably haven't got a lot of suppliers is because there's a mistrust of this sort of thing, especially in the SME community from sort of tier 2 downwards. They think there's all red tape, and if you ever need me involved in any of those conversations, I'm more than happy, because I can tell you the whole. Just one very last thing. So the ERDF funding runs down, or is running down now, and obviously given the Brexit exit, as it were. Our funding runs down from March 22. We're aware that there's a shared prosperity fund that's being spoken about at government level, although there won't necessarily be so much emphasis placed on London. It's going to be nationwide. Where is that sort of sitting, Julia? Because clearly people will be looking to to get in amongst that.
I think I'm going to have to look into that for you, Glenn, because it's not something that I'm personally involved in, so I'm going to have to look into it for you. But as you say, I know that all the stuff that used to be coming from EU level is now going to be via the Shared Prosperity Fund. I keep making the case within government that London's a very big place of 8 million people, and you shouldn't just see it as some golden goose. It is a whole bunch of different communities with different needs, particularly in the estuary region, where we have some problems with skills and so on that we shouldn't overlook in the understandable desire to look at other areas of the country, particularly the north.
Thank you. I've got a call. I've got a question from Andrew Liddell. He's asking about the growth of electronic vehicles, EV, and whether we're thinking in the Hornchurch and Upminster area to have more power sources for those electronic vehicles, and what plans we've got in place to facilitate the growth of electronic vehicles.
Thanks. I think we may have been on a call together before about this issue, and we've raised it with the council to see whether we can get more charging points and infrastructure, because it's really going to be very difficult to meet targets on electric vehicle rollout if we don't have that infrastructure in place. And I think we're going to have to take that up with the council again, because I don't know what the latest is on it. But I mean, I think it's going to be a government problem effectively, because if we have these ambitious targets for getting rid of petrol and diesel, we're going to have to actually help people to go electric, and charging is going to be a key part of that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, that's great. Ian, you had a question, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the council, and actually it's a shame Howard's not able to come today, but he's been front and centre of a lot of what we see as businesses as to what the council's been doing. And through January, February, March, they were very good about holding Zoom meetings, allowing us to put loads of questions to them. and particularly about the levels of support that was out there for mostly the home-based businesses, which was next to nothing. So until we got to the very last round, at the round 6 discretionary funding, there was something available, but whenever the question was asked about the discretionary fund at round 5, it was all, we're always bound by what government tell us we can do. So the real question here is, how likely is it that in future local government can be a bit more flexible with any packages that come down from central government, so that they can make them more effective in their own borough?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I can't give you an exact answer to it beyond saying that I think the pandemic has highlighted that we need to give local authorities and regional leaders a certain amount of more power to be able to make their own decisions that suit their own communities. How that is done is not entirely within my view, I'm afraid. So I can take that away and ask, but I think it's a live debate within government, particularly if we expect there to be more levelling up spending going on. We want to make sure that spending is effective, and some of that effectiveness will come if local leaders are actually able to have more of those funds. So, sorry, I
suppose the interesting follow-up, thanks for that, Ian, is, and how, to be honest, I want to be super fair with Howard. Howard has been really active in terms of engagement with the business community. And if, from my perspective, running a business in Havering for 10 years, this has been a step change towards, more engagement from the local authority in terms of really understanding the challenges and needs of Havering businesses. But there's often that thing where, SMEs in our community have a different perspective to what leaders in the council might have, particularly when it comes to helping sort of put in place laws and rules that have an impact on businesses. How do we close that gap?
Well, I think events like this, where people tell us, the difference between what we think we're doing and what's actually happening on the ground. I mean, that is a real challenge. You can sit there in Whitehall, whatever, thinking you're making a really revolutionary decision that's going to really improve people's lives and the rest of it. But then you hear on the ground that it's not actually having the cut through that you hoped it would have. So, you just have to keep that dialogue up. I mean, that's why MPs have these points of interaction with their constituents, where you work out what's actually working and what's really not. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to keep that conversation going, really.
And on that note, we've got a question about parking. Tracy, are you around to answer the question?
Oh, Tracy, you're on mute, I think.
I thought you were going to do me the honours, Chris.
I can do, but while you're here, Tracy, I might as well. It saves my voice, to be honest, if you do it.
I think you love hearing it, Chris.
Your voice, certainly. Your voice, certainly.
So one of my questions was in relation to parking, local parking in Hornchurch High Street. Obviously, at the moment, there's the limit, the freebie period has been taken away, much to my sadness and many others. And obviously, this is affecting businesses within that local high street. And is it ever going to come back? I think it was a real sad shame that it went in the first place, and the fact that the rates then increased quite disproportionately to what it was previous.
Thanks, Tracy. This is one of those things where, as an MP, I'm elected to represent people in Parliament. So my ability to influence things like local parking policy is pretty limited, unfortunately. I know there was a huge amount of concern about the changes in parking policy at the time in which they were implemented. And I relayed a lot of that stuff to the council. I had meetings with the leader and so on. He had concerns about funding within the local authority. So I met with the local government minister and tried to unlock more funding for Havering to try and reduce some of the financial pressures, but the changes were made, and I can continue to have that conversation, but I don't have decision-making powers over this, unfortunately. So by all means, continue to correspond with my team, and we can relay those concerns on, but Paul might also be able to get stuck in on this as a councillor, because he has a vote within the town hall, whereas I don't have a vote within the town hall.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the other interesting point is the impact on retail businesses in Hornchurch and Upminster, because parking has an impact in terms of some of the buying decisions you make, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the feedback we had from businesses. Some businesses were more supportive of the hour than others. Some were concerned that the hour meant that people popped in and then got concerned about their ticket or whatever, and so didn't stay to linger in other shops. Other people said it was great because when people pop to get their paper or go to the post office, and they also popped into their shop. So it wasn't an entirely universal view about whether it was a good thing, but I think it was broadly supported. So yeah, I did try and relay that at the time, and it was quite a bruising period.
All right, thank you for that.
Just to add to that a little bit, the on-street parking on the meters, you still do have one free hour if the meter's working. Okay, a lot of the car parks at the moment in Hornchurch, they're covered up because they're not working. Now, I've had it in writing from the council that if you can't pay by cash, you should, if you can, pay by Ringo app. If you can't do that, then parking is free. They've informed the wardens not to issue tickets if the people can't pay by cash. So I'm suggesting to people, if they go out there and they can't, take some evidence, take a photograph to prove that there's no working meters in that car park. And that when you get a ticket, if you do get a ticket, you've got some recourse to come back, and also I'll help that. But I am still pushing, and I've been pushing for a long time to get some free parking back in Hornchurch.
Amazing. Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate that. We've had a call. We've had a question from Ross Elliott, who runs the Havering Daily. What investment do you think Havering businesses will benefit from? Government investment, I think he's talking about. Will Havering businesses benefit from over the next few years?
Government investment. Well, I'd say there's some key big projects that we are investing in the region. So the Lower Thames Crossing being one of them, the Thames Freeport being another. And then there's a number of grants that the council is able to access. So I've been encouraging the council, for instance, to apply to the Levelling Up Fund, where you can start to get money to regenerate different projects, for instance, the regeneration of the High Street. So I've been in correspondence with the council about that. I think they're launching a bid for a particular area in the south of the borough, but I'm very keen that we get some stuff for Hornchurch and Upminster. But they assure me that there are already some plans underway to do some high street regeneration, so I shall be in touch with them about that and hoping that that's happening. But there's also funds that they can unlock when it comes to regeneration of council estates. So there's a big project underway within the council to regenerate 12 of the estates across the borough, including in Harold Hill area, where you'd see improvements to the public amenity, which should be good for businesses that are keen to improve the offer that they give to residents.
And in terms of the work you've done since 2017, what do you tell us a story about sort of the casework you've done, supported and engaged with a local business, and how it's helped?
As I think we can do a whole bunch of different things, whether that is talking to central government about some of the tax policies and how that's affecting people on the ground, whether that's connecting local businesses like the lady I referred to earlier with some of the local college and skills providers, whether it's some of the events that we host where we've actually managed to connect people to their customers, a whole range of different ways in which my team help out. Sometimes you get very, very specific challenges for particular businesses. There was one that we were dealing with on social care, where we're trying to unlock government policy in a way that will improve how that business can run. So, really, we are open to any inquiries that need to be put to us about that.
That's an interesting challenge.
Causing people headache, because I know that there are a lot of them. Another big project, I don't know to what extent there'll be opportunities for local business, but we also have one of the things we're proudest of is unlocking money for a new health centre in Hornchurch, which is on the where that big development is on the St George's former St George's Hospital site. So we hope to improve the way in which we provide care, social care and healthcare to residents as well. I don't know to what extent there'll be opportunities for businesses there, but insofar as there are,
but a happier, healthier community should help everybody.
Yeah, and we've spoken previously about mental health, Chris, and really the whole aim of this health hub is to get much more care in the community rather than in hospitals, and integrate that care so that social care providers GPs and mental health care providers are talking to each other and providing a bit more of a holistic care for people. So that's a project that I would invite everybody to keep a close eye on, because I think it'll be a fantastic facility when it's up and running.
Great. Paul, you had a question, didn't you, mate?
Right.
He's on mute.
Yeah, no, for that you wouldn't unmute on me. My question wasn't so much business related, it was more just a general one for Julia, and it was about recycling. Recycling is a huge issue, especially in Hornchurch. Other boroughs have got much better and cleaner distribution of recycling materials. Is it purely a council related issue, or can the government push to actually get an overall better recycling regime put in place?
Yeah, there's a range of things happening in this area, and we've got an environmental bill going through the House. Hasn't gone through yet. It's happening shortly, which will have a whole bunch of things in relation to waste. Some of that will be putting more pressure on producers to account for the costs, the environmental costs of the packaging and other things that they produce, and to help with disposal. I think there may be some of the sort of bottle recycling schemes. There's a certain terminology which is just slipping my mind at the moment. But also I hosted a meeting between Harold Wood Women's Institute and Councillor Dervish, who is the environmental lead for the council on this, and he said there were some certain contracts that were coming up for renewal where they were going to try and get a better approach to recycling and waste collection than they've had. But again, I mean, that's probably something best raised in the town hall on that level, but on national level, we're putting through this environment bill, which should try and reduce some of the stuff produced, and put a greater cost on the producer if they're doing things that create a lot of waste and rubbish.
Okay, so that's all the pre-prepared questions done. It's an open forum now, if you're okay with that, Julia. Anybody got any questions, comments, things you'd like to ask?
Well, also, I mean, if anybody wants to just tell me what it's been like for them over the last year, because I mean, I want it to be a two-way conversation. So, I mean, I'm keen to hear how it's been. What have been the biggest challenges that people have faced? How are people feeling about the future? Are they optimistic, pessimistic? It'd just be great to hear from you.
Steve?
Chris, Julia, I think some companies are still hiding behind the sofa with COVID. I think there's a lot of apathy and some I'll give you an example, national companies trying to change just basic utilities, electric, gas, water. I would like some of these CEOs just to try and change. One of our tenants just about 3 months ago, just trying to change a utility from one name to another. It's absolutely shocking. You've got no general phone numbers. It's an hour's waiting. They used to give us as agents a general agent's email address so we could ping over to the utility companies, party A to party B or vice versa. Then there's these rules about you've got to be locked in for 2 weeks before you can release a utility, and then suddenly £200 excess charges are being thrown about and everything. I think the utilities companies, if you do have a word with your colleagues, I'd be grateful, but these big public national companies are not helping themselves. If we can't get through to them, and we're agents trying to notify them who their potential customers are, the public at large are just not getting through, and a lot of people are getting themselves caught out with estimated bills, etc. And I think some of these CEOs should look at their wholesale mechanics of how they're running new customers. It's all well, you can sometimes get through to the national websites and do an online conversation, but you're often told it could be half an hour, 40 minutes before the representative of the taking the inquiry can get back to you. And I just think sometimes we've gone back to old-fashioned writing to national head offices, which takes about 60 days before anybody gets back.
You know what, Steve? You're not alone in that feeling, actually.
Yeah,
so
it's quite frustrating. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm consistently optimistic, and I'm certainly optimistic about business in the future. But one of the biggest frustrations, thank you, Steve, one of the biggest frustrations we've had actually is large organisations in the financial sector using COVID as I can see Cassie nodding because she's experienced more of this than me. Large financial institutions using COVID as a bit of an excuse for not delivering good service. And actually the individuals who are responsible and feel responsible for looking after people, businesses on this community, sometimes bear the brunt of that. So changing that is a bit of an impact. Mark, you were going to make a comment.
Well, I was actually looking to change the subject, and ask Julia another question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Julia, this isn't a sort of a hijack question, because you're a great supporter of ours, but you're probably aware of the initiative that I think started off in Parliament a number of years ago about the first 1,001 days of life. And Boris appointed Andrea Leadsom to actually lead on that. Mm-hmm. And I did tackle with Angela a number of occasions on LBC, and I was delighted that we actually got a whole section in there about children with special needs and disabilities. So that's really great. The report has now been written, and it's a very informative report. And I just wondered how that's going to work its way through the corridors of power, and whether it will result in a recognition that there is a significant need for central government to get to grips with the funding of some of the early intervention that needs to happen, not only with all children, but specifically with children with special needs and disabilities. I wondered if you've got any updates on that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. And everything you do on First Step is incredible. Yeah, I mean, I understand that Andrea's report got a ringing endorsement from the Prime Minister, and I think they want to take it forward. I can't comment about how far that's gone, because I think it was fairly recently that happened. So I have to ask for an update from the relevant people. I can get in touch with Children's Minister Vicky Ford about it, who's a Chelmsford MP as well. The other thing I would say is that one of the things that the Cabinet Office is doing is coordinating a huge piece of work about tackling public service backlogs, and that's in education, it's in health, it's in the court system. And I think as part of that work, I think departments are going to have to look afresh at how they deliver certain services, and use the pandemic to drive improvements in some of those things. I mean, some of the time and money is just going to be sheer going back through backlogs and dealing with operations and so on. But I think there is also a chance to improve how we deliver services in a range of areas. So I mean, we are very, very happy as always to work with you to see how we can do that. And I'm going to have to write to Vicky to see what she's doing with Andrea's report, because I haven't got the latest on it, but I know that that was launched fairly recently and got quite a lot of support from across the House. So we'll have to see where we are with that. Sorry, I can't give you a clearer answer at this stage.
Great, thanks for that, Julia. And Mark, thank you for the work you do, mate, in the community. Steve and I saw firsthand last week the amazing work you do, and thanks for being part of our community too. We've got time to probably squeeze in one very, very short question or comment. Would anybody else like to give it a go? I know, Glenn, you'd said, but Michelle hasn't spoken yet, so I'm going to give Michelle an opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Fascinating, very interesting insight. Thank you there, Julia. I wanted to circle back to what you said about connecting the local business to Havering College. Education is a real passion of mine. I love teaching young people and bringing them through. And event management doesn't necessarily need to be taught at degree level. So I sent you a separate message asking if I could just shamelessly ask for the same introduction.
I'm sure that can be done. So in the last sort of 18 months, the Havering College, Havering Sixth Form College have merged with something called New City Colleges, and so that's a part of a wider group across East London. I think it covers Hackney as well, because I think it covers Hackney, but definitely covers Tower Hamlets, because I know you said you've got other connections to East London. So it may be that even if it's not delivered in Havering, there might be other courses across their wider group. So I met the chief executive of the college group last week on Wingletie Lane with Janet, who's now heading up Havering Sixth Form College. So yes, I'm very happy to make that introduction to see whether there's any courses that you might be able to assist with.
Amazing. Thank you.
But I mean, I certainly fancy you going on one of your meditation courses.
Yeah, we could all do with that. And well done for. Should we for a future Havering Means Business meeting just have an hour's worth of meditation? I think that might work really well.
Give me a shout when you're ready.
Amazing, superb. I'll get my gong ready. Michelle, is that what you do? I don't know. Anyway, that is the end of a very quick hour. Thank you so much to Julia for joining us today. Hopefully, I've loved it. I think there's been a lot of engagement, questions asked, and hopefully this will lead on, when we can do this sort of thing again, to a live event where we get Havering businesses together with Julia, and we answer some questions and ask some questions and continue that dialogue. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Julia, final thoughts?
Yeah, just to say that we're going to try and do that supply chain event with Lower Thames Crossing if you're keen. If we start doing our events in person again or even online, then they will be keen to involve you guys. And just thanks for all your time. I appreciate it and look forward to working with you all.
Can you just confirm when that event is? Have we got a date for that yet or not?
It's, oh God, I think my team have given me the Essex one, but we can have our own one is, I think, what they suggested to me last week. Cool. So I basically will get them to do a 45-minute chat with you guys and see whether that's something that anybody's interested in getting more involved in. Amazing. All right, great stuff. Have a really good day. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you on the community soon. See you later. Bye.